Back in early 2019, I purchased the definitive edition of Hyrule Warriors for the Switch thinking, the Zelda game. How could it be bad? Oh, was I wrong. I played the game and immediately heard a strange, loud screeching noise and realized it was the fan of my Nintendo Switch. I put on headphones and turned off the volume, but after a half an hour, the Switch got super hot and I was very worried, so I shut the Switch down immediately, and I was just really scared it would overheat. I continued playing the game in short bursts and kind of enjoyed it, but after a couple of levels, I was stuck. I played some other modes and played as some other characters, but after a few hours I thought, is this really all there is? And yeah, it was. I grew to hate the game and I even sold it. But then, over a year later, they announced a new Hyrule Warriors game. This one is a prequel to Breath of the Wild, and I am furious. I thought, that has so much potential as an idea, why make it Hyrule Warriors? I did see the gameplay later on and thought, wow, that looks pretty cool actually, and I went ahead and tried the demo, and finally I was convinced to play and buy the game. I think one of the biggest things that caught my eye with this game was how the combat was really good. In the first Hyrule Warriors, there were like 4 moves you could pull off, barely any combos, and I hated it. But in Age of Calamity, so many awesome things to pull off, so many creative ideas, mechanics, and they all combine to make a fluidity not in many other combat systems. Chaining together so many attacks, switching characters, finding treasures, activating specials, and pulling off status effects in one combo is so satisfying and rewarding, and the game provides a challenge that never ceases to make that combat filled with perfect amounts of freedom and difficulty. The game takes mechanics from Breath of the Wild, like different weapon types, runes, and abilities, to make the game more interesting, and thankfully none of these mechanics are tossed to the side, as they all fit with different enemy attacks as well. The game allows you to experience many different characters, who all have unique attacks based on the backstory of the character, and it makes every mission unique, as they will often have varying casts of people you can play as. Sometimes this can create a disconnect with the story around the mission, though, because you can sometimes play as characters who seem pretty minuscule in the narrative surrounding that mission. But in my opinion, it's a worthy sacrifice to make every mission feel one of a kind. The fluid animations of the characters are really helpful in making the moves satisfying, along with the sound design that is unique and clever. I think one of the things that makes this system truly special is that it doesn't feel at all like a Warriors game to me. Instead of just mowing down tons of small enemies in a repetitive grind, the game gives you larger opponents who pose a big challenge to any repetition. The larger opponents really do make the combat more interesting, as they are more powerful with unique attacks, and they'll often make you combine many mechanics. The rune attacks are a major part in fighting the larger enemies, as they will help weaken them so that you can do a special move. The Sheikah Slate still needs to recharge after these attacks, which normally adds a lot of depth and strategy, but sometimes leaves you unable to pull off a special move if a runic attack is activated a second time too fast. Regardless of this, though, I must praise the combat once more for making each playstyle unique, with many different moves for each character exclusively. Everything fits together in this game, as the combat will often be satisfying, and though occasional camera issues and frame rate drops can weaken the immersion, the game uses clever visual tricks to ensure that the drop in realism is small. Most of the time the game will save any frame rate drops for flashy special moves in order to mask them, and I do commend the team for running this game on a Nintendo Switch so well. This is especially impressive considering the graphics and how beautiful the animations are. I played many games this year with great animations, and while Spider-Man still blows everything else out of the water, Age of Calamity is not at all bad. The game will really make you feel inside the world, with every move feeling cinematic, and the special moves really making you feel the exaggerated swagger of a Hylian knight, which gives me goosebumps all the time. Wait. Wait. I think I already used that joke. Oops. The cinematic cutscenes are surprisingly abundant and do an amazing job of conveying a story in an entertaining, action-packed, and colorful way. Nintendo doesn't usually try to push strong video game stories, but this game shows that when they do, it is extremely well done. Not once will the game have a weak cutscene, and the story is always wondrous. The champions, Link, Zelda, Impa, and all other characters have really strong connections to each other, and in this game the voice acting is actually much better. In Breath of the Wild, pretty much the only gripe I had was the way the voice acting was handled. But I must say, some characters' VAs do actually great jobs in this one. Mipha, Impa, and Zelda are all pretty decent, but Revali and Urbosa do an amazing job, alongside most side characters, many of which I was surprised to see get more complex stories and voice acting with cutscenes. The only voice actor who did a bad job was Daruk. Maybe they wanted him to sound funny, but he often sounds just off. But to reiterate, I do think the voice acting for this game and Breath of the Wild is great, just not anywhere near how good it can and should be. And really, in the end, the stories this time are surprisingly amazing. Each mission will give backstory through text, and it effectively sets up the scene before the cutscenes flesh out the story. The characters are all really well written and feel much more vital in this game. I never thought Nintendo would be willing to expand on the Breath of the Wild lore like this, but it is on every account a great surprise. I adored how some very small aspects of Breath of the Wild, like the Yiga and the Korok, became very big in the context of Age of Calamity's narrative. Many new characters are added, and they all feel surprisingly welcome in the world of Zelda, despite being very unique. At times, the story is very emotional, and might even make you feel very sad for characters in the story. Many characters like Zelda are shown to have a self-doubt sparked by her father, and Link is incredibly well done even in the context of not talking whatsoever, because of how his actions portray his motivations and goals. He seems to many other characters as a weird, secluded knight without much purpose or unique value, but in the end, he is one of the most important aspects in stopping the Calamity. Revali's eagle and Mipha's care for Prince Sidon are very minuscule traits in Breath of the Wild, but here they are shown in full force, and it never feels like too much or too vital to the story. I honestly think one of the most important parts of a story trying to make the player feel things is the music, and this game does not fail at all. Breath of the Wild had very fitting music, but one that didn't have a lot of memorable tracks. When it did, they were amazing, but they didn't have many of them. Age of Calamity, though, cannot be beat. With nearly 6 hours of fantastic, beautiful music, this game revives the timeless, amazing music that has helped to make Zelda a gaming icon for generations. But oh my god, I forgot to even mention. Get ready. You can pilot the divine beasts. Oh my god. Sorry. Just give me a moment. Honestly, this is just the coolest thing ever. Sure, with some of these, the gameplay is a bit repetitive, but the wow factor and the fact that some, like Vomito, are actually very deep, makes these gameplay segments just fantastic. Every character and path you take when battling will feel different, and the way each character handles seems perfectly juxtaposed with their context. For example, Zelda doesn't hit enemies hard, but has a true knowledge to blocking and attacking, similar to how she possesses the Triforce of Wisdom, yet doubts herself. Every mission had a perfect balance and length, and I really loved every detail. Knowing the true power of the Divine Beasts adds a great realism to the Calamity's force. Knowing how much power was required by those saving Hyrule, and if I had one complaint, it would be that blocking has no purpose, and it is basically just replaced with dodging. Games like Ghost of Tsushima have both of these mechanics, and it creates a strong player dichotomy, but that is missing from Age of Calamity. But that's really the only issue I have for the game. Many scenes in the story sent shivers down my spine, and the game is a revival of the legend, the ancient legend of a princess, a knight, and an evil warlock reincarnated each 100 years, destined to create a legend. After a very dark year for Nintendo, making it very hard to still love them as much as I do, this game is a beautiful reminder of how Nintendo can just kick some absolute butt with their games and make an amazing experience for all. Is the voice acting in some parts bad? Yes. Is the block mechanic useless? Yes. But everything else just blew me away, that I physically cannot give it a score below a 5. The music, the characters, graphics, story, and especially gameplay all knock away any potential flaws to hold this back from being a masterpiece. The final score for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is 5 out of 5.